Alright, so this video is going to be about whether or not you should be making small scale games or making a medium sized game. This is specifically focusing on indie game development where there aren't that many people to throw at the problem. And so a lot of the common arguments, I think from my point of view, it sounds like most people advocate on YouTube for making small games. And their main argument for making small games is basically that you don't know what the game is going to be like until you've explored it enough, and you need to probably test out a lot of different ideas and effectively evaluate it after a certain period of time. So you need to do more of a diverse spread to explore things and converge on something that's pretty good. Some of the other arguments that they make is that it just saves you like risk. It's like a risk mitigation where if this one game you spent a month on doesn't do very well, okay, whatever. You can just move on to the next one, and you didn't gain much, but you didn't lose much, right? Whereas if you compare it to the nightmare scenario for some people where they like work on something for 4 years and then it basically fails as well. And so a lot of people advocate for this small prototyping, fast iteration type style. And actually, one other thing they say is that you can learn more from it because you're covering more, I don't know, novel permutations or different types of games. You learn more from it. So what I would say in advocation for a medium-sized game, which first I'd like to caveat that a lot of the time something that's annoying about this type of video exactly is you have these people on YouTube giving opinions about what to do, and it's clearly biased by what they've chosen to do. Now, this is a very understandable thing. People should advocate probably for what they're doing personally. It would be strange if someone is self-aware enough to know and articulate what they're doing, but then to dissuade others from doing it, although that does exist as well, where people are giving a warning. What I would preface it by saying is, I don't know what the best option is. Nobody on YouTube really does, and it's a very complex thing, and it's basically just a fun topic to talk about and explore and think about intellectually. So there is no real answer, but possibly some of these things are things worth considering that might end up influencing your own unique perception or conclusions on it. So the first thing about making a medium game is you're making a medium game. By definition, if you're making small games, they're just limited in how good they can be. I feel like you could take any small game and you could theoretically just add another 1,000 hours of something to it, making it more like a medium game if you just keep doing that. And I think if you go about it the right way, you're just making a better game, right? Maybe it could make it worse if you start adding features that are half-baked and actually messing up the core of the game. But if you don't do that, then it can effectively just improve the quality. That's really good because we don't want to waste people's time. If you make a game and it costs you 10,000 hours to make, but then 10,000 people play it for 3 hours, the majority of the time that was wasted was the people playing the game. So the amount of time you're putting in it is actually, it's multiplied by the number of people. So it's really important to keep in mind that you shouldn't release something that really sucks. But it probably wouldn't be that big of a problem if you release something that sucks because people won't play it. But I like to think about that as something where I prefer not to waste people's time, and that means I probably have to spend more of my time in the beginning, just actually building it up so it's even worth anyone's attention. Yeah, so you don't want to waste people's time. You want to make a better game, more or less. And one of the things that they say is the learning thing. I think in terms of a medium game, what you're really learning is different things. So when you make small games, you're learning how to make a small game. You're learning how to prototype quickly. You're learning how to evaluate it quickly. That's what you're practicing. When you make a medium game, you're practicing something quite different, really. You've got a more intricate system that you potentially have to try and wire together. You might have to It's just like you're spending more time on one particular problem, and so you might get more in depth with it, and that may or may not lead to more learning. So it's very simplistic to evaluate learning in terms of more products equals more learning, rather than more features in one product equals more learning or whatever. So I don't really agree with that. I definitely think it's a case by case thing. Although I would say making a game isn't necessarily how you learn the most. Learning is something that's usually done by ingesting novel information intentionally, like studying, whereas programming is more like a practice of applying knowledge to solve a problem. So it's a different loop than like a pure learning one. Yeah, so I think making a medium game is probably what people should do, realistically. I think you can try and practice different things with smaller scope games. I think there are places where a smaller scope game really works. Oh, I want to make some thing that I literally expect people to spend a maximum of 2 hours on or something. But if you're going to try and make something more substantial, I don't think trying to maximize or minimize the amount of time you put into it like it's a game is very effective, because it's just, I think it's going to come through in the game pretty obviously. And you can look at some examples also. Not that I'm a dude obsessed with examples, because guess what? The future is made up of stuff that doesn't exist today and that doesn't have an example from the past. So it's very limited in using examples. But there are some examples out there already. Stuff like Slay the Spire. Basically, it took thousands of hours from multiple different people, and then there was even people that joined the fray just for free and for fun. And it was over half a decade that game was basically being iterated on. And it's interesting because some of it's actually transparent, and you can see it in its early stages, which were so much worse than the end state. But effectively, that's time. It doesn't really matter that it was time distributed between a bunch of different people. The two core people were the ones doing most of it. But another example is something like Stardew Valley. The dude was effectively learning how to program for a long time before starting. And then he invested like 4+ years or something just working on this thing. That's not a small scale game. That's a really substantial risk for a human to do. And then you got Hollow Knight, where it's even longer, where it's 3 or 4 people working for 7 years on something. And sure, the 7 years, maybe they had months where they didn't do anything, so it's really more like 5.5 years with vacation time and sleeping and whatever. But effectively, those are some of the most successful games. And then you've got a slew of games out there that are just way, way worse that I don't even know the name of, because there's 20,000 games being released on Steam like every couple months or something. And those ones are the ones where it's, yeah, we spent a week working on this, we spent 6 months. I think it's arrogant, to be honest, to think that you spending 6 months on something, that people are going to really like that. It's very rare for an idea to really be that great, and the other parts that make an idea good, like the refinement and the iterative time sink. I don't think it's because people are arrogant. I think it's naivety, whatever the word is. Effectively, there's two different things. You either literally think you're beyond needing to put in a lot of time to make something good, or you just think that maybe you can get around it with some sort of careful maneuvering, super efficient design or whatever. I don't know. And it's possible. People do change the whole game, more or less. Every person does bring something new to the table. And so it is possible. But it's unlikely. So anyways, I think that's a little bit more of a balanced take. I think both of the things have advantages and disadvantages. If you want to minimize risk, yeah, I would probably go with a small game. Well, one point on that too is it's an illusion that you're minimizing risk. Because if you make a small game and then release it and it fails, you still pretty much lost the 4 months that you worked on it. You just effectively spent less time working on it. And in that scenario, what they advocate for is that it's like you're minimizing risk, but really it's like you don't know if you reduced the risk because you don't know what the future is. So if you had put in another 4 months and doubled the success of the game, then effectively it had no effect on the actual. A lot of these people are focused on measurable things like profitability or whatever versus some other things. But let's say you put in 4 more months and it effectively doubles the profitability. At some point, it probably doesn't happen anymore, where it's like you put in 16 more months to a game that has 16 months and it may not double the profitability of it. And this is what a lot of people are optimizing for. But in reality, nobody knows the answer to any of these questions, right? And so all you're doing is making assumptions and using a heuristic that cutting your losses quickly is minimizing risk, when in fact it's much more complicated. The calculus for it's basically intractable problem. As a human, it might be useful to think about it, but you can't really strategize with it all that much. And I'd say that most people that spend their time doing that are going to have a real propensity to reinforce their bias when it does get confirmed. They're going to be like, holy shit, I am a genius and I was totally right because of that one idea heuristic I thought about and centralized my life and decisions around, even though that might not be true. It's like, it's only really true if it's reproducible like 1,000 times, and nothing in video game dev is reproducible at all, really, besides the games running. And even then, it's like a lot of them just have bugs in different operating systems and stuff, different environments. So anyways, let me know what you think. It's obviously a very complicated issue that doesn't have an answer, and I'm not going to give you an answer. I'm just giving you some of my brain dump on thinking about it, and understand, yeah, of course I have bias. I've chosen a lane partly because I have to, because we are humans that live in space and time. So we make decisions and we can't roll back the clock and change it. But yeah, let me know what you think. I'm curious about these and I like watching other people's videos about them to see what they think.